Why do we as Arabs and Muslims carry Palestine in our prayers like a heartbeat, yet remain silent as Sudan collapses, as Yemen starves, as Iraq limps through ruins that we barely recognize or acknowledge? This isn't judgment. It's an inquiry, a reflection on the moral compass of a civilization, on empathy that sometimes chooses convenience over conscience. Palestine isn't just a political cause. It's poetry wrapped in pain. It's the lens through which we see our dignity, our failure, our hopes. Every time Gaza burns, the Arab world seems to awaken, only to fall asleep again when the smoke clears. And the question lingers: why Palestine? Why does this land, above all others, capture the moral imagination of an entire civilization? To understand, we must look beyond politics and media. We must trace the threads of history, faith, and identity. Because Palestine is not simply a country under occupation. It is the mirror of our collective conscience, the reflection of who we were and a warning of what we risk becoming. And yet, if the heart of our empathy beats only for one place, the body of the Arab world grows weak elsewhere, in Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, Libya, and other forgotten lands. This story is as much about what is visible as it is about what remains unseen. Palestine is not merely coordinates on a map. It is sacred soil, etched into the spiritual geography of humanity. It is where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heavens on the Isra and Mi'raj, where Al-Aqsa Mosque, the first Qibla, where Muslims pray towards, stands in eternal vigil, and where generations of prophets from Ibrahim to Isa walked, prayed, and wept. This land is not just history, it is memory, faith, and destiny intertwined. When Al-Quds, Jerusalem, fell under occupation, it felt like a wound to the very soul of the Arab and Muslim world. Faith, identity, and dignity were intertwined, as I said, and when the sacred was threatened, so too was the collective conscience. Every benediction, every whisper of, "O God, free Al-Aqsa," was not just supplication, it was remembrance. It was recalling that night journey of the Prophet and affirming that divine justice matters in both the celestial and the terrestrial. Palestine exists in the hearts of millions, not because it's politically strategic, but because it is spiritually irreplaceable. And that is why its suffering resonates in ways that distant wars, famines, and crises often do not. Because Palestine touches the eternal as much as it touches the present. The Nakba of 1948 was more than a geographic or humane disaster. It was the collapse of an Arab dream. Over 700,000 Palestinians displaced, their villages destroyed, their heritage uprooted. Yet the pain was not theirs alone. The Arab world felt it as a collective humiliation. Palestine became a mirror reflecting the frustration, the unhealed trauma, the lost dignity of an entire civilization. Ali al-Wardi, the Iraqi sociologist, described Arabs as living in a constant tension between the illusion of greatness and the reality of humiliation. Palestine crystallized that tension, simultaneously a wound and a reminder of what unity could have been. Every stone thrown in Gaza is not just resistance, it is an echo of a region that has often felt powerless. Every march, every protest, every slogan, "Free Palestine," was a declaration. We remember. We remember what we lost, what was taken, and what remains sacred. Palestine became the ethical touchstone of the Arab world. The one tragedy where outrage was almost universally moral, almost universally felt. Other crises existed and exist. Yes, Sudan's famine, Yemen's war, Iraq's sectarian collapse. But Palestine was always the emotional yardstick, the axis of collective conscience, and the barometer of Arab dignity. From Nasser's Cairo to Saddam's Baghdad, from Assad's Damascus to Khomeini's Tehran, leaders wielded the Palestinian cause like a banner of legitimacy. Free Palestine became the anthem of Arab identity. It transcended ideology, sect, and geography. Everyone could chant it, and yet, the slogans often concealed failures. Borders closed to refugees, corruption rampant, promises unfulfilled. The louder the rhetoric, the quieter the action. Despite this, the Palestinian struggle retained its purity in the eyes of ordinary Arabs. An occupied people resisting occupation, resisting erasure. This simplicity, this moral clarity, made it possible for millions to align across political divides. Palestine became both a real struggle and a symbolic refuge. It was the cause that allowed Arabs to believe in justice again, even when their governments failed them. Even when their streets were silent, Palestine spoke, because its story was so clearly written. Occupier versus oppressed, suppressor versus resisted. In the modern age, images matter. Palestine's tragedy was visually immediate and emotionally potent. Children facing tanks, mothers clutching infants amidst rubble. The iconic kufiya, now a global symbol of resistance. The story wrote itself in stark moral contrasts. Oppressed versus oppressor, innocent versus armed. This is why the world rallies for Gaza even as it ignores distant crises, because simplicity resonates in an image-driven era. By contrast, Yemen, Sudan, Iraq, their suffering is complicated, layered, and fragmented. Multiple factions, competing narratives, and international entanglements obscure moral clarity. A drone strike in Sana'a is harder to visualize as clearly as a tank in Gaza. A militia in Khartoum is harder to condemn than a government-sponsored army in Ramallah. And a sectarian conflict in Baghdad is harder to empathize with than a child fleeing bombs in Gaza. Palestine offered the moral frame the world can understand, and that frame draws global attention. But it also unintentionally conditioned Arabs to focus on causes where right and wrong are obvious, leaving other suffering invisible. And in that light, we find Palestine's tragedy as morally legible. We know who occupies, we know who resists, we know who suppresses, who endures. This clarity allows for universal outrage. It permits solidarity across sects, regions, and ideologies. It offers a moral lens visible to all. In contrast, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, these stories splinters. Each actor claims legitimacy. Each faction claims victimhood. International intervention hesitates, unsure who is right, who is wrong. Moral ambiguity paralyzes empathy, and when clarity is absent, suffering becomes easier to ignore. This is why Palestine receives immediate attention, while other Arab crises linger in silence. Beyond politics and visuals, Palestine carries an almost sacred weight in Islamic consciousness. Hadiths connect Al-Quds to ultimate justice, prophecy, and eschatological events. It is not just a city. It is a site where faith, history, and destiny converge. To defend Palestine is to engage in an act that feels larger than life itself, an act of moral and spiritual alignment. This religious and prophetic significance gives Palestine a permanence few conflicts can claim. It becomes not only a cause for the present, but also responsibility toward eternity. Muslims in Jakarta, Cairo, Casablanca, and London all feel the same pull. It is the unique combination of sacred geography, historical trauma, political clarity, and visual storytelling that cements Palestine as the heart of Arab and Muslim consciousness. I really do appreciate you taking the time and watching the Kandidi Chronicles. Please do join our community by subscribing so that you don't miss out on any content regarding the Arab and Muslim history, identity, and modern condition. And if you really do enjoy the channel week in and week out and would like to support us even further, please do join us at our YouTube membership program as well as on Patreon. Thanks again. Palestine reflects us as much as it suffers. It shows our courage and our guilt. It reminds us of our failure to unite, our tendency to divide, our ability to care selectively. When Palestinians stand with nothing but stones and resolve, we recognize bravery we have lost. When they are silenced by forces greater than themselves, we see the failure of Arab solidarity. Palestine forces introspection. Are we truly defenders of justice? Or are we spectators moved by what is easy to see? It is one of the biggest causes that allows Arabs to feel moral again. In cheering for Palestine, we reclaim a sense of purpose, of dignity, of historical memory. Yet this very clarity carries the risk of selective empathy, focusing on the one obvious injustice while overlooking others equally severe. But the heart cannot beat alone. Sudan is burning, a nation caught between coups, tribal wars, and famine, largely ignored by global media. Yemen is starving, its children growing up knowing hunger and death more intimately than lullabies. Iraq remains a scarred landscape of sectarian collapse, where infrastructure and trust alike have been eroded. Yet our empathy often stops where moral clarity ends. These conflicts are messy, factional, and complex. We struggle to determine the oppressor, the oppressed, the hero, and the villain. This, though, shouldn't provide us any comfort. Palestine should not be our excuse to ignore these lands. If it is the heart, these countries are the arteries, the lifelines feeding it. Neglecting them weakens the entire body of the Arab world. We often say we are one nation, but unity is not rhetoric. It is action. Caring for Palestine without caring for Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, or Lebanon is a half-hearted devotion. Empathy must be disciplined to extend beyond what is easy to see. Real solidarity is not selective. It does not prioritize visibility over need. It is not a function of simplicity, convenience, or media coverage. Palestine should inspire a broader moral awakening, a commitment to every corner of the Arab world suffering injustice. Our sympathy for Palestine is not misplaced. It is sacred, carved into the conscience of a people who still believe in justice. Yet compassion loses its meaning if it stops at one border. The same pulse that aches for Gaza must also tremble for Khartoum, for Sana'a, or for Baghdad, for every mother searching through rubble, every child learning hunger before hope, every father burying tomorrow beneath dust and silence. To be Arabs, to be Muslim, is to feel the pain of the other as your own. The Prophet said, the believers, in their mutual love, compassion, and mercy, are like one body. When one limb suffers, the whole body responds with wakefulness and fever. If we weep for Al-Quds, let us also whisper prayers for Darfur. If we march for Gaza, let us remember Ta'iz. Justice is neither geographic nor selective. It is a moral rhythm that must echo across every Arab heart until no wound is left unseen and no cry is left unheard.